All right, we are live. Gurridyula.
Watamuli.
Watamuli. Thanks for having us here.
No, thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot you've got here, beautiful country, territory. And yeah, we're excited to be here, and the drive up was an interesting one. You know, a lot of emotion and feeling coming up, and yeah, been following you a bit on your story and your journey on Instagram for a bit. And it's been good to finally meet you, and wondering, yeah, if we could just start a bit about you, who are you, and your background, and anything like that.
Well, my father, he's Wangan and Jagalingou. His name's Gurridyula Gaba. He's been land rights activist my whole life, basically. We come from a family of rebels. My grandfather was called Breakaway Ernest because he kept running away from the mission, and he ran from Cherbourg, which is near Kingaroy, to basically near Miles, which is a few hundred clicks from there, and he just kept running. And because he was forced in there, and his father, him and his father had guns put on him at gunpoint in 1918, told to put on a truck out in central Queensland here and sent to Cherbourg. And, they've fought against the government ever since. Have always been anti-establishment. We've always been fighting for our home. And so that's been the main focus that I've grown up with my whole life, where, my mum, she's from Tassie. She's got the convict bloodline, but she's also Pakana as well, from down there. So there's that mix of the good and bad, I guess, where, my whole life I've just grown up in a very activist type of household where everything was for the progressive point for Aboriginal people, and what can we do and how can we do that to progress and work on top of what's already been done. And so, we've fought against people, even in our own mob, because we stuck by our own cultural integrity and that we are who we are. And, our life has brought us here, from the dispossession of central Queensland to bringing my family back home to basically repatriate them to the point where we are now. And that lineage basically of that anti-establishment that's been basically bred into me, that I just use their system now. And I studied the greats. I studied all the land rights activists, the Michael Andersons, the Robbie Thorpes, and I noticed what worked and what didn't work. And so from that, then I've started to create on my own path of what I think is a good way to fight back, basically.
Beautiful. Would you be able to tie that into, we talk about activism and stuff.
Yep.
What is it exactly that you're, let's say, maybe protecting? What are you trying to preserve here? What is this land that we're on?
Yeah, well, I consider myself a samer.
Okay.
And I'm under the notion that the trees and the rocks that are here deserve to be in the same places they were where my ancestors were walking this area before they got removed.
Yeah.
So through that, then, I have a right to keep these things in the same places as where they are. And so everything ties into culture. Every animal, every tree, every grass blade, every bird, everything is all connected into our culture. And so if you take away one of them, then it takes away the imbalance of all of it.
Right.
So we are trying to protect things that are still ours. There's placenta in these trees from our old people when we're born. Our old people would put our placentas into the trees, and then that would be our tree.
Wow.
And we'd have to maintain that tree, and that would be your tree for your whole life. That's basically the only thing you owned in life, was that tree.
How would they put the placentas in there?
And so what they would do is they would cut the tree open with an axe, with a stone axe, and then they would dig out the inside meat in the tree, and then they would cut another piece of bark, put the placenta into it, and then put the bark as a cap into it, and then they would wrap it up. But the way that they cut it, they make it look like a vulva, like a vagina, basically, and it's signifying birth, the birth of the mother. And so what happens is when you put the placenta inside the tree, we all know that placentas contain DNA. Yeah. And this DNA is then, if women don't take their placentas with them from the hospitals, the hospitals use them for stem cells. And they take the stem cells out of them because there's DNA inside of it. So you think about it, if you're putting a placenta inside of a tree, that DNA is then feeding into the tree, and the tree then feeds that down its roots, down into the mycelium, and the mycelium then connects it up with the other trees. And so that just then spreads out around your whole surroundings. So then it's not only just that tree then that you're connected to, it's everything around that area that you're connected to. That is the most simplistic thing that humans can do, to give them a connection. Every Australian could do that. That would change the game of this whole place. But that is where my main focus is of, there's trees here that are 500, 600, 700 plus years old. Why does an international company, or anybody for that fact, any farmer, anybody, why do they get the right to destroy our trees when they're not theirs? They didn't grow them. Yeah. They don't have their scars on them. They don't have their people's placentas in them. Yeah. So why aren't they ours? You know, shouldn't that be our property? Like if it's got our DNA and our placentas and stuff in these things. So this is the main crucial point. Another crucial point about here is they're tapping right into the water table, which is connecting up to Gurridyula Springs. Okay. And even this area here, where we are at Gurridyula, which means waterhole 1. And so they tapping into the water table, draining the water table, and it'll destroy all life all around it. All mining companies do it. They destroy all the life all around them. And so I grew up 2007 to 2011. I was doing cultural heritage work, so I've worked on multiple mine sites before. And then I saw the error of my ways. I saw country being destroyed at a massive alarming rate, and I thought I have to do something about this, because if I don't, then nobody else is going to do it, because everybody else that comes here says, well, there's nothing we can do about it. We have to pick the rocks up before they destroy it. Yeah. So then I thought, well, this guy came along. Why not just finally say, no, you can't destroy my trees. I'm not going to let you cut my trees down and poison this water or drain the water. You know, I'm not going to stand by and let something like that happen again and again and again, you know. So it become this point where somebody has to stand up for nature. Yeah. And if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. Yeah. And somebody has to talk for all these black-throated finch that are here, the endangered, the Zika skink that's endangered, even all the other birds and the animals that live here, you know what I mean? Like, there's no voice for them. Yeah. And so right where we are right now is supposed to be a pit. But because I'm here, there is no pit. So at this point in time, through culture, we've been able to basically stop the government from allowing this guy to come in here, basically. Yeah. When you talk about, like, well, just a quick point going back to the birthing trees. Is there like a way that you could say people could have some form of connection? You know, for example, myself, you know, like my placenta has, you know, probably been used for whatever, stem cell research or whatever. Is there a way for people out there maybe who are in the same situation where they could get a connection to the place that they were born? Well, yeah, you can. And the thing is, people don't understand that if you're born in this country, the old spirits have seen you here. They've seen you being born, regardless of whether you're in a hospital or not. They felt your energy and they felt that you're here. And so regardless of what skin color you are, it's the acceptance of the fact that you are a part of your surroundings. That's what gives you your connection.
Yeah.
And whether or not you have a birthing tree, there's still other ways that you can gain connection. And a good way that I tell people how they gain connection is spend time in the bush. If you spend time in the bush, especially around the area where you live that you call home, that you think that is a part of you, you spend time in nature, and then eventually an animal will stick out to you. That animal then is your animal. So then you soul-heartedly believed inside your mind that you are that animal and that animal is you, and then you have to do everything inside your power to protect that animal, because if you don't, then you're putting yourself in danger.
Yeah.
So could you imagine if 26 million people chose an animal?
Yeah.
And then chose to defend that animal's environment? Could you imagine if a logging company tried to come into a koala habitat?
Yeah.
There'd be like 1 million people that would rock up and say, you are not touching my koalas, because if you touch my koalas, you're touching me.
Yeah.
And that's an act of violence. And so people will get up off their asses themselves.
Yeah.
Not even anything to do with the environment. It doesn't have to be this green thing. It's literally my connection with my animal. And that you touch my animal and you destroy my animal's habitat, and I'm going to stop you from doing it, whatever cost it means. So then that gives people a responsibility then.
Yeah.
You know, that humans will say that we are a virus on this earth and that we have no use here. That's incorrect. We have uses here. There's at least 2 things that I can think of that animals can't do and nature can't do. 1 is cold burns, and 2 is cleaning of rock water holes. Animals in nature can't clean out rock water holes.
Yeah.
As Aboriginal people, they had rock water holes everywhere that they would clean out, which would create an ecosystem and an environment for animals in and around the area to come in.
What does that mean, cleaning it out, like removing debris?
Yeah, removing silt buildup. It's basically our church. So our rock water holes used to be our churches. It's our labour of time to country, and then country provides back for you. It's better than sitting inside of a church and asking for an imaginary person to give you life when you make life yourself. And if you make life yourself, then aren't you the creator then? Aren't you the creator? If you've seen a rock water hole, silted up, you clean it out and then fills with water, nice clean water, and then you see birds come in, you see echidnas come in, you see kangaroos come in, and then they start hanging around there. And then they start breeding around there.
Yeah.
You've created the basis for life. You're a creator. So then that means that we're all creators within. And then so that gives us a purpose. And then while we have the rock water holes and stuff like that, we have our own animals that we have to take care of. And so these are ways that can connect this country into this country without going, oh, well, only Aboriginal people can do it, and so we're just going to not worry about it and do our own system. Where they have the opportunity and the ability, like, if you want to learn about Aboriginal culture, all you have to do is sit down and talk to an Aboriginal person, and they're more than willing to tell you about culture and stuff like that. It's just people are ignorant to the fact that they think that Aboriginal people are going to go, no, this is only for Aboriginals and you can't hear it. Where if people just open their minds up more and become more accepting to the fact that they have more in common with us than they do with some king 16,000 kilometres away. He's got nothing to do with Australia. That system has nothing to do with Australia because this country is what it is, and there was something here before it, and it's going to continue to be here, and everybody just has to assimilate into it because any other way is going to be a complete failure. And whether they have to learn the hard way to go through a complete failure to get to the idea of, well, maybe Aboriginal groups had some sort of right system, you know, to be able to be sustainable. But that comes from education, and doing things like this out here gets the opportunity to just educate thousands of people to then have the understanding about, you know, what is connection to country and what is, and how does that affect Aboriginal people, yet everybody else in this country, you know. Aboriginal people are genetically tied to their traditional homelands. And the reason for that is because you are what you eat. And so if you eat the fruits and the berries and the endemic animals and the plants that come from that area for thousands and thousands of years, you become genetically tied to that area. So that is why those tribes are basically genetically connected to those areas, which anybody else will do too if you were eating the native foods from those areas over generations upon generations upon generations. So like if Australia got completely cut off from the world and they had to go back to doing what they would do again, they did before, then the process would just roll over. Evolution would happen. People's skin would end up getting darker, and everyone would end up black again here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you can't try to terraform your environment around you when the sun is always going to be the same. You know what I mean? So it's like 1,000 years' time, everyone's going to be dark-skinned here again. It's just a delusion that they think that they can bring another culture in to change something that has already been here for so long and works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about, the water? We're here looking at this spring, dam system that you have. I mean, we talk about like protection of country and protecting forests and stuff like that.
Yep.
And last night we were talking, and you were talking about the spring system here, and I really was intrigued by the Jurassic water, or what is under this land that we're sitting on.
Yeah, so all through here we have water tables and aquifers that run all through here. This is a part of the old stock route. So the stock route was where the settlers found where all the spring systems were, and then they ran the cattle up straight through all the spring systems. And what's happening though is all these aquifers are getting fed by the mountain ranges, and it's just filling up all these underground aquifers. And what they don't know though is all of these water tables are connected. They're connected because stygofauna keep them connected, which are like little crustaceans that live inside the water that open up openings, and they keep them open so they can travel back and forth in between all these different water tables. So they done a test at Gurridyula, put some dye in the water, couldn't find where it came out. They still don't know where Gurridyula is being fed from. They don't know whether it's straight from the Great Artesian Basin, but it pumps thousands of litres of water out, hey? It's been running since the dawn of time. The water that comes out of it is so old they call it Jurassic water because it's millions of years old. And they know that because of the crustaceans that are inside the water that's in there. When they're cut off from other water tables, they kind of grow genetically different than other species. So that's how they kind of determine whether that water table is connected. But they still don't know much about that. Like, this government doesn't know anything about water tables or anything like that, but they just give out mining leases, not realising that our water is our life and it's connected to everywhere. It's connected to all the other tribes, and we have life through that. That's how we connect with Mundagara, the rainbow serpent, the creator spirit, because Gurridyula for us is the resting place of Mundagara. So the story goes when the earth was void of any plants or anything like that, clouds started to form. And then through those clouds, the sun shone down through the rain, and out come Mundagara, the rainbow. And he came down through the rainbow and hit the ground and started carving up all the mountains and rivers, and then he went underground and his scales started coming off and started creating all the underground resources and stuff like gold, rubies, whatever it may be. And we believe that his final resting place is in Gurridyula. That's the entrance into Mundagara's resting place, basically, because it's always had water. It's one of the oldest springs in Queensland, if not probably Australia, that it is so unique that it's different from all the other ones. It doesn't look like a nice blue waterhole thing, but you're guaranteed that there's always water there. And you're guaranteed that there's always water there, that there's palm trees there called the waxy cabbage palms, the Gurridyula ones. They're endemic to that area, so they don't grow anywhere else because they've always had water there. So they've basically lasted through ice ages, basically, to still be able to be there. It's pretty amazing in itself. You know, people don't understand how much water is connected and how much actually we need it to survive, but we just we disregard it right now, and we allow companies to just abuse it and not realising the ramifications of what's going to happen in the future generations, basically. Like, children in the future probably, they're going to have so much contaminated water that it's not going to be anything reminiscent of what this country used to be, where you could walk up to any creek and drink the water out of the creek, where now everything's all contaminated. Even the river flow off the mine here is contaminated now. Like, it's a problem that, you know, somebody needs to stem it. And my rights come in when it comes to water, because I have a right to protect the water. And so, because in Queensland we've got the Queensland Human Rights Act, it gives me the right to get that water, and it gives me a right to protect it. So I'm pressing the issue of this government doesn't have a right to our water because they didn't create it, especially the Jurassic water, the water that hasn't been recycled. How do they lay claim to that? And so that's basically one of the bases as well of what we're here for.
So definitely, this is a very, you know, unique ecosystem. When we talk about the water and where it comes from, I mean, I guess the general perception of Australia for people is that it's a very arid and dry country, but in fact, it has a lot of water, right?
Yeah, well, there's water all over Australia, basically. Like, you could basically just drill a bore anywhere and you'll basically get water.
Yeah.
We have been told that certain things about this country that is a lie. It's only just, you know, like the east coast of Australia has lost 7 inches of topsoil because of farming. It just doesn't look anyway the same as what it used to look like. But it's just what we've been told by the government and by the people that, oh, well, that's just what happens. You know, we have no big trees out here anymore because all rose gums were all cut down, you know, so there's no real old growth forests. All the old trees that are here are only here because they've got hollows in them and they couldn't get any wood out of them.
But yeah. So what we see out here, I mean, this is a pretty new kind of forest environment. This isn't...
Yeah, so a lot of this has just been regrown from maybe 50, 60 years, something like that. I mean, this is a pretty old property still. It's one of the nearly originals that started out here. Elgin Station, the one that you come in on Elgin Road, that was one of the first properties that was formed out in central Queensland. And they brought out 1,000 head of sheep from Darling Downs. They brought them up. And so the group that were there at the time, they had another name. They were called Kookaburra people. And then when the sheep rocked up here at Elgin Downs, they changed their name to Monkeyburra, which monkey means sheep. Because they were the first ones to see this sheep, they were like, what is this animal? That they changed their whole name of their tribe to sheep people, basically. And, you know, so they've been out here for a very long time, since I think Elgin got started up in 1860s, something like that. And so there was still conflicts happening out here at that time. There's an old Cobb and Co shelter just down near the Carmichael with rifle holes out the sides, you know, to fend off the blackfellas. And because it all started from like Cobb and Co or stuff like that, you know, them just making tracks through places and then people defending the Cobb and Co basically. And it's just that assumption that they thought that everything was theirs, where there was no validity in it in the first place. But when you've got the guns, you just roll through, basically. And so a lot of massacres happened around here. There was a lot of waterhole poisonings and things like that. There's not many people left from our tribe after all the slaughters that happened. Like, just from the Wakilburra people, from my great-great-grandmother's people, there were 500 plus people here from Wakilburra when they first got here. That's not taken into account the native police coming through and wiping people out. It doesn't account for the smallpox that came through and wiped out hundreds and thousands of people. So by the time that they even came up to central Queensland, we've lost a lot of our old people and stuff by then, you know. But there is accounts of them saying that they've seen people with like long white beards, things like that. And then you think to yourself, like, they always told us that we had short life expectancies. Now they're saying to live a long life, you've got to eat natural foods. So if we were eating natural foods our whole life, don't you think we'd have a long life expectancy then? You know, the whole narrative of Aboriginal people has just been to subjugate us and to make us look like, oh, poor things, you know, where this is a shining example of we're not going to just be that poor little Aboriginal people that we need to help. It's, no, we'll just take back what's ours, thanks.
What's like an ancestral diet? True.
Most of it would include most of the time just collecting all the seeds from the grasses and making flour, a lot of the berries that are around. Because back in the day everything was subdivided into 4 class groups, throughout most of Queensland there's a kinship system that falls into 4 class groups of Wunggu, Gurridyula, Barnbury and Gurridyula. These 4 different class systems. Everything animate and inanimate in nature is subdivided into these 4 classes to give equal opportunity for everybody. You don't get to choose your skin. That skin is chosen from birth. But it's not even chosen. It's basically from your father. So whatever skin your father is determines what skin you are. And so then what skin you are determines what skin your child is. And so these things created a community as well that it's a safety net. If people only had like one daughter or something and their parents died, that daughter can go and be with a group of people from that same skin and know that she's going to be safe. They would leave women alone with groups of men that are from the same skin because they'd know that they wouldn't do anything with them and they would protect them from other males. Mm-hmm. So it just created that safety net that we don't have anymore, and they destroyed it. They intentionally destroyed that whole system to disconnect us from everything, basically. And we just refuse to die. We're not going to say it's that's the end of it, you know, but that's where the equality come from, because I could probably eat kangaroo, but I can't eat emu, and I can't eat porcupine, you know, but I can eat black-headed python or something like that. And then what people don't realise is they even had classes of like fur and feathers or white meat and red meat, you know, because the food was that plentiful that you had the option, you had the ability to be picky, basically, you know, and say, well, we're only going to eat that animal. And when you're living in paradise, you don't have a problem with subdividing everything up. And so that stops everyone from just eating everything out of house and home, you know, like nowadays, because they've lost it, they'll just go out and kill every animal and eat it, you know, where back in the day you might not have eaten that animal, you know, you might not have been allowed to eat that animal. So it's just reintroducing that as well. And it's just, basically I'm just trying to get the wider public to understand about the connection between country and the animals, that it's not about taking everything you want. It's about being selective and giving back and making sure that things are going to repopulate.
Mm-hmm. And so your name Gurridyula, it means wedge-tail eagle.
Yeah.
What's the medicine of that eagle, the wedge-tail eagle?
Good question, man. I never asked, eh?
Yeah.
We didn't get taught that. Like all the medicine information that they have, most of it got lost, except for the main medicines that we have, like gumby and things like that, and other little plants out here. But like nearly 90% of all of our stuff just got completely wiped out of our memory through indoctrination from one generation, man. They beat it out of them, so then the next generation won't learn.
So you're basically out here just putting what pieces are left on country, connecting.
Yep. And then I get information from other mob and about how they do things. But everything is about spending enough time on country to contemplate. Everything's about contemplating because we are contemplating people. And it's about sitting there and figuring it out on how it works, because it has to be simple enough to be able to pass on that knowledge. Mm-hmm. So if I can sit here long enough, then I can think about how these things work. And that's where the redevelopment of culture comes from, by me contemplating. And then it starts to become apparent, and then, you know, I start putting the pieces to the puzzle together, where it's never going to be 100% of what it used to be, But I accept that fact that it's not going to be the same. But if it's still, we have the ability to be our own selves and be our own people, then we can develop it however we like. And it's not up to the government to decide on how we live our lives, you know, because it's the simple fact is it's property rights. We are our own people, we're self-determined, and we're going to be whoever we want to be. If we want to all dress a certain way, we will all dress a certain way. But it's not up to the government to decide on how we operate. And so whatever we do, like this ceremony here, the Gurridyula ceremony, has never been done before. But that doesn't mean that it's not sacred, because like I said to the police when they first rocked up in 2019, and they said to me, what's so sacred about that corroboree ground? And I said, well, my people built that corroboree ground last week. What's the difference between my people building it last week and 2,000 years ago? And he looked at me and he's like, nothing. And I said, exactly. So at that point in time, they pretty much understood that I could basically rubber stamp anything as long as my people say that it's sacred, because it's not up to them to decide what's sacred and what's not sacred.
And what exactly is that ceremony that you're conducting? I mean, how many days have you been here now?
So I think today is 724, so we're getting closer to the 2 years. And we got here on the 26th of August 2021. And we've got a ceremony up on top of the berm wall, which is basically across from the pit. And we've got 3 rules in there. The first rule is the fire always has to stay lit. The second rule is there's no foreign objects inside the circle. And the third rule is there always had to be one W&J person inside the circle. So because there was no foreign objects inside the circle or above, we couldn't have a roof or anything on it. We just had bits of leaves and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so for 408 days, we maintained one person inside that circle at all times, which is a pretty crazy achievement in itself, Like, nobody I know has ever been able to occupy an area for that amount of time for just proving a point of pure occupation.
Yeah, I think it would be more than proving a point. It'd be your protection, like doing
Yeah.
it. Like what would be something that, I mean...
Well, it gives power to the circle because the energy is in there constantly, and everybody that comes up to the circle to get smoked in, everybody feels the energy because everybody that has come in has put energy into the fire. And the fire is like my heartbeat. And I consciously think now that if that fire goes out, my life goes out. So I have a conscious responsibility to make sure that that fire stays lit because that's where the power lies. And so the energy that is in that space and the energy that we've created there by occupying that area for such a long time has created this sacred space that people can feel the energy when they go there. And that's not something that we got taught from something that's 10,000 years old. It's something that we created and created sacredness. Because if you're going to say, well, that's not the way the old people did it, then that is just assimilating people into a way to say, well, if they didn't do it like that, then you can't do anything. You're just forcing someone to die. So we create whatever we like that is sacred to us. And no other group can say anything because they have their own little ceremonies and their own ways of doing things, and they have no right to interfere with other mobs and the way that they do things, you know. And most blackfellas around the country know that this thing has never been done before like this. Even the head lawmen out in the desert, you know, they know that this is not a cultural thing that has been done before, but they respect it. They respect it and they acknowledge it, that it is sacred now because we gave it power. They know that we don't have law like they got law. They've got cultural law really, really strong because they never got removed. But the power that we have is a different type of power because we have a power to be able to fight back a system that oppressed them. Even with all of their law and their power, they still get subjugated by this government, where we're an example of we don't get subjugated by the government. And so whatever power we do have, we've manifested it ourselves. And they can see that power. They can see that we're very powerful people, but we've manifested it ourselves through walking through the flames of hell, you know what I mean, for our people. That's where you gain your that's where you gain your power from. Like, from sitting in front of that fire for so long, man, I spent so many days in front of that fire. I was, because I've been here pretty much the whole time, it was basically me just swapping out with everybody else, and me just having to get family members to come as a secondary person so I can just have a break from the circle. I spent hours in there, hey, thousands of hours. And it's contemplation time. You know, you got time to think. You got time to contemplate, like, what's the next move? How am I going to entrap the government? Because it was all just about entrapping the government. It was supposed to try and trap the police in, because they were just going, if they were going to come in, they were going to come in with boots on and disrespect all three of those rules, and which would end up with another human rights case for us.
Were you fearful during that process? Like, on any level? Stress, fear?
Yeah, it's a bit of a stress feeling, because we got removed in 2020 with like 50 police officers one morning, just rocked up. I don't have the fear of dying, because I know that we're in a 21st century, and I know they're not going to try and shoot me, because I just become a martyr then. So that anxiety of people coming up to remove me kind of subsided after a few months. But it's nerve-wracking, man. Like, the day of when it's happening, you got these mad butterflies happening, because you don't know what's going to happen. Because you're venturing out into territory that nobody's ever ventured out into, hoping that the police are going to stumble. Because if I can stumble the police, then this government has nothing, because they got no henchmen to remove me then. So then my aim was to take out the police, because Sun Tzu says to win a war, you must capture the whole army. So to capture the whole army, you need to slap them with human rights, so then they will be fearful to try anything on you. So that's basically what we did. And that fear factor completely went out the window the moment that we got a human rights case on them. I got you. I caught you in a position where I know what you're scared of now. And I know what they're scared of, and it's a human rights breach. Because they don't want that international smear on their name, that they will try all lengths to try and make this not as complicated as possible. Yeah. And, you know, my fear for the police, I fear more the police when I go into the city than I do out here going to Claremont. Because I don't trust the police in the cities. Yeah. You know, I don't know who they are. They could know me and not really like me, and then end up in a watch house and die, and be one of those 500 plus Aboriginal people that died in custody without a royal commission. You know, so I always have that anxiety in the back of my mind, because I know I'm playing with the colony, and I know that I'm kicking the hornet's nest, and I'm intentionally kicking the hornet's nest, that it could be life-threatening, you know what I mean, because they've got billions of dollars at stake here. I could inadvertently just completely destabilize this whole country, not even knowing what I'm doing. There's a lot of people that are got their ears up, you know, like, they're watching me. All those politicians are all watching me. They all know about what this is. They're waiting to see what my next move is, because they don't know what I'm going to do. But the problem is they can't get rid of it now, because even a senator has said my name and Waranungu and Gurridyula in Parliament, and it's tabled in there now. It's in Parliament forever. They've recognised me without knowing that they've recognised me, because my old man went through 5 federal court cases to try and stop this guy. He had the same judge throughout the whole 5 federal court cases. And then when it come to our native title, it was the same judge. And so he was protecting all these other people, all these other Aboriginal people, saying, well, they're the majority and you're just a minority. And then when it come to native title, all of those families relied on us for our cultural knowledge. So my old man turned around and said, go F yourself, you're not having my affidavit, because that's my statement of claim to my country. So I rocked up to the court from 10 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was interrogated by the state's attorneys and the judges sitting there. And I gave them so much information that should have gotten us native title. But because my old man didn't put his affidavit in, their excuse was we didn't have a functioning society. So they threw away our native title. We're the only tribe in Australia that the government changed our name from Wangan and Jagalingou to Claremont Belliando. They're not even Aboriginal words, and they just changed them. And so it's like, you tried to change our name, you didn't even give us native title, and now you're going for full extinguishment over the whole country area so we can never claim it ever again. That's just salt in the wounds. You know, so I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to lay down and die, because if I didn't do anything, we would have died and our names would have gotten lost to the sands of time. A new Aboriginal map would have came out and our name wouldn't have been on there.
How is this, the country, the old people, the spirits, you know, like the relatives, the animal relatives, how has that helped you deal with this whole, you know, fight that you've been in?
I see it as they're depending on me. I see it as the animals look at me like they're expecting me to do something because they can't do anything. Same as the spirits on the other side that haunt the people in the camp. That's all they can do. They can't make them leave. And so everybody that works there has terrible sleeps and there's hard time trying to sleep, and everyone that comes over this side has a great sleep.
We slept well last night.
You did?
Yeah.
Awesome. And it's, you know, it's because it's that peaceful place. And those spirits that are around here, because they still live in the trees, man. They still live here. It's untouched forest. And so when it comes down to a war, they're going to realise that we're on the same side because we're trying to stop the dude from destruction across the road. So then nobody gets tormented here. Nobody gets tormented because it's kind of like an agreement that we have that they don't come in. You know, we have had incidences at the front, you know what I mean? Like with blackfellas saying like they see spirits and stuff like that, but they don't come into the camp. They stand at the front and wait because they can't come in. They know that what we're doing here, and that's why I say to people, why would a spirit attack you when you're on the same side? You're trying to protect country, they're trying to protect their home. So you know, you're on the same side. So, yeah, people just need to understand that there is more here that drives me than anything else in the city. The fact that I have the ability and opportunity to be able to fight for country, man, like, and do this type of thing is a blessing in itself, you know what I mean? Like, it's an enrichment. Like, it's a life enrichment, you know what I mean? Like, my life is so much more fulfilled doing this than I would do anything else in the city, because I know this is my destiny and what I'm supposed to do. You know, I tried to escape it. I tried to move to Bosnia, but it kept calling me back, kept saying, you have to come back, you have to come back.
Why Bosnia?
My ex-partner, she was from Bosnia.
Okay.
So her mum lived over there, so I spent a bit of time over there and learnt the language, and it really opened my eyes because it helped me to learn Widi, because they got a very similar vowels with their A's and U's and stuff like that. So it helped me to be able to rebuild my language. Yeah. And because didn't know a second language, I only knew a couple of words of Widi. And so once I was able to learn a second language, then it helped me to learn Widi then.
This whole, I like to use the word prayer, like in the cultures I've studied with in South America and North America, it's like the vision, or like, what am I doing every day, you know? And this vision that you have here, this prayer that you have here, it's really on the grassroots level, you know, and it feels like it's very much like a warrior camp at the moment, you know. It takes a lot of heart, a lot of strength to be here. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about, like, from your perspective, culturally and your experience here, what does that mean to be a warrior, and what does it mean to be a man, like a life protector? Yeah,
well, there's people that do things for themselves, and then there's people that do things for their people, for the betterment of their people, not even thinking about for the betterment of themselves. Many people will try to be self-appointed leaders, but like I always say, in Aboriginal culture, everybody has the right to speak. It just depends on who's going to listen to you. The leader is the one that everybody listens to. They just gravitate to them because they get the job done. They know what to do. They know how to work under pressure. They can fight. They will defend their mob against another mob. You know, they won't be scared to be on the front line to walk straight into battle for their mob. And even when you think about that you transfer that into today's age, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A warrior is someone that doesn't care about what the colony is going to do to them, but they're doing it for the betterment of their people. And, you know, Aboriginal people have all this built-up energy, but they put it into the wrong things, thinking that they're gangsters, American gangsters.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell them it's much better to be a warrior than a gangster, because then a warrior at least fights for something. A gangster always ends up either dead or in prison. If you end up dead as a warrior, you become a martyr, and people will then honour you for generations for your service to country. And so, you know, slowly change the mind of the youth to be like, well, do you want to just live an average, normal life like everybody else, or do you want to be a change maker? Do you want to flip the script of what's been this current status quo for 250 years and have the ability and have the strength to just not care about what the consequences are going to be? You know, I'm in a particular position where, you know, I've never been arrested. I've never had a criminal charges against me, except for now with this common assault thing that it's completely just it's a misuse of justice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're basically just running me around the system.
Mm-hmm.
But many of our mob have the ability to do stuff like this. They just don't have the motivation, or they don't have the resources to be able to get up and fight back, basically.
You were talking before about, you know, grassroots or the younger generation and like the importance of being on country, like connection to here, getting them away from those other kind of ways of, you know, destruction, stuff like that. And you're also a hip-hop artist, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, musician, yeah. I like hip-hop.
Yeah. What's like your music that you produce? What would you say it is?
Yeah, the music that I like to make is, it's kind of like a mixture of hip-hop, electro and deep house type of thing. I found while making music, the closest thing to tribal music is deep house electro. It has the same sort of rhythmic sound to it, and it has that real natural tempo to it, where most other music I don't get the same type of feeling from it. So I like creating that type of music because it gives me that sort of emotional feeling of a ceremony type of thing, you know, because people don't realise that type of music, it puts you into a frequency which is the same as in a corroboree. They're just doing it through a different avenue of singing and playing different instruments, but it's that monotonous repetition.
For people out there who don't know what a corroboree is, could you just speak on that a bit?
Yeah, well, corroboree is basically like a ceremony. It's a ceremony where tribes get together, even one tribe, their own clan get together, and they're basically doing different dances. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the dancers would explain certain things of what foods to eat, what foods not to eat. They might explain which way to go if you're going somewhere. It might explain creation. Most dances have a story to them. And then you'll have ceremonies that basically get them into that rhythm and that frequency where they're basically high off their own meditation. And so what they found was they could naturally make themselves high through ceremonies, through basically just like chanting and clapping for long periods of time will get you into this vibration where you just start to become someone on a different level because you're just feeding into this frequency.
Would that be like visionary as well?
Could be.
Yeah.
Yep. It could be people seeing visions and stuff like that. It could be people doing certain ceremonies to, you know, see who's coming or when the rain's going to come next or when's the next season for the animals, when's the right time for go out and get the kangaroo and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's definitely a main pillar in the culture.
Main pillar.
Dance, yeah.
It's the main pillar of ceremonies, because that's what kept you grounded in your law and what you were doing, because it was your life. And through that, then you were fulfilled in your life. You had a purpose. And so one can only imagine what the life would have been like compared to now, where, where some of the highest suicide rates per capita in the world. And then they want to try and force us into mining, where mining, you're 80% more likely to commit suicide than any other job in the world. So combine those two together and it ends up with a bad recipe for blackfellas wanting to kill themselves. And you think about it, back in the day, why would you want to kill yourself when you've got nothing to stress about? You've got no job, you've got no mortgage. There's no reason to basically off yourself. It's just something that's happening with our people these days. Even everybody else in the whole world it's affecting, but that's just the Western system what's creating that. Like, do they not understand that people need to be happy? And Aboriginal people were happy because they didn't have anything else to do but just go hunting and looking after their families, And so you look at those places, like I look at my culture and then I look at other cultures around the world, and I look at places with the highest suicide rates. And then I look at them and then I'm thinking to myself, they've lost themselves. They've lost themselves because they've become so consumed in money that they've lost who they are, that they get to a point where they just don't want to be here anymore because they don't know who they are anymore. And so, like you'll have Western countries like Japan, it's a very rich country and people would think, oh, life doesn't seem too bad there. But there's a forest that people go in and kill themselves in there because they got so much stress and so much pressure on them that suicide is a massive thing in those countries, where, you look at somewhere like Saudi Arabia and there's hardly any suicides, and then you think to yourself, is it the cultural thing? Is it the civilization? Is it the way of life that we've taught people that this is what you're supposed to do, and if you don't do it, then you're a failure? And so if Aboriginal people are always starting at the bottom, then you're always going to be called a failure, where when do you ever get a chance to get up off your knees and be able to make something,
Is there maybe a word we could finish on? All this experience that you've had, your cultural experience, your ancestral lineages. For people out there, is there a word that you could offer them about, a way of life, like a way to stay connected, a way to live, to find that connection to country, to find connection to themselves?
You find yourself when you find your place. Once you find your place, then you find yourself. When you stop for a moment and stop thinking about everyday life and thinking about what do I have to do tomorrow, and then you think about what's going past me while all of this is happening. And the good thing about going out into the bush or into the forest or wherever you live is you have the opportunity to escape from all of that, and then you can begin to then start focus on what is the real thing and what is our real purpose here as humans and what's going to fulfill me. And what you'll find is the more that you connect yourself in by wanting to connect. It's not something that happens straight away. It's something that you, inside of you, want to do. You want to do it and you want to find an animal that you connect with, that is you and you are them. And that animal then becomes your basically spirit animal, totem, whatever you want to call it. But that's your personal responsibility. It can be something as simple as that. That's where people can take their first step and they pick their animal first. And then from there, then everything branches out from there. Then they understand the ecology of that animal and what it eats, things like that. Then you start planting berries and whatever that animal eats, you know what I mean? Like, that's caring for country, that's connecting to country because you're living in symbiosis with it. And it's just the thought of humans are not on top of a pyramid. We're in circular. We've got to work in circular together. Otherwise, it's a breakdown in society and it's a breakdown in the environment as well. It's getting that thought and mentality out of our mind that God gave us all things to use, where no, there's things that shouldn't be used by us. There's things that should be left where they are. And so It's that breaking down of everything is for everyone to use to creating something where something is sacred then, and whether that's people have their own little separate little water hole or something like that, or they got a tree that they come to and spend time at. That's their connection to country, and it'll slowly build after time. And then after a few years, you'll start to feel it more and more. And that's that connection.
Love that. That's beautiful. I think it's definitely a powerful message, and the work that you're doing out here is a good example for people to believe in themselves fully, and understand the ancestral laws and things that need to be kept in order. So I appreciate the time you've taken welcoming us here to your land, to your country. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me on either Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or Spotify under Gurridyula, Gurridyula. And just look us up on there. I've also got some songs on Bandcamp that I put up there before I put out onto Spotify, just for people to get first access to a lot of the songs that I make. And that money just goes straight towards buying new music equipment so I can keep making more music. Once I get some better equipment, like to make a proper Gurridyula album and stuff like that. But yeah, anywhere on those social media platforms, I'm on as a Gurridyula.
Sweet, brother. Yeah, we'll post the links with this episode, and
yep.
So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for taking the time to
do
this interview. And
yeah, thank you very much.
Somos la vida, somos la luna, la estrella.